The crystal glasses caught the soft light of the restaurant chandelier as Dmitri, our owner, lifted his flute. To Petra, our new head chef, your passion for innovative cuisine has transformed this restaurant. Everyone raised their glasses in unison. Everyone except Renata, our executive chef, my boss. Her lips formed a tight smile that never reached her eyes as she gripped her champagne so hard, I thought the stem might snap. I accepted the toast with grace, turning to shake hands with Wesley, the food critic whose glowing review of my winter tasting menu had cemented my reputation in the culinary scene. The celebration felt surreal after 3 years of 16-hour days, burns, cuts, and relentless pressure. Your duck confit with cherry reduction was poetry, Wesley gushed. I've never tasted anything quite like it. Tasted. I smiled, about to respond when something reflected in the polished silver serving tray caught my attention. Renata's silhouette hovered over the bar where my special celebratory cocktail, custom creation the bartender had made just for me, sat waiting. Her hand moved swiftly, dropping something between her fingers that dissolved instantly into the ruby-colored liquid. My heart stuttered. Had I imagined it? But then she glanced around furtively, satisfaction flashing across her face as she stepped away. You should try your signature drink, she said, suddenly appearing at my side. Everyone's waiting. Her voice was honey-sweet, but her eyes were calculating. After all, not everyone gets so lucky in this business. She leaned closer, her whisper hot against my ear. You're just lucky, she hissed. This promotion should have gone to someone with actual talent. Ice crawled down my spine, but years in high-pressure kitchens had taught me to keep my expression neutral. My mind raced. I couldn't accuse her outright, not without proof, not with everyone watching, not against the executive chef who'd been here for 8 years while I was the newcomer. Renata stepped back, watching expectantly as I approached my cocktail. The room quieted, all eyes on me as I was meant to take the ceremonial first sip of my celebration drink. I could see triumph flicker in Renata's eyes as she waited for me to consume whatever she'd prepared. I lifted the glass, noting the undissolved granules still settling at the bottom. My mind flashed to the countless cooking shows we'd watched during slow afternoons in the kitchen, including one about forensic toxicology in the food industry. The clarity that washed over me was sudden and cold. Actually, I announced, wearing my brightest smile, our wonderful HR director deserves the first toast. I turned to Camille, who stood chatting with the sous chefs. She fought for fair advancement opportunities in our kitchen. This celebration wouldn't be happening without her. Camille beamed, clearly surprised by the recognition. She stepped forward and accepted the glass with pleasure. Oh, that's so thoughtful, Petra. My eyes flicked to Renata. The color drained from her face as her intended target sipped what was meant for me. Delicious, Camille declared, taking another generous sip. I watched Renata's hands tremble slightly as she excused herself to the restroom. I tried to focus on the conversations around me, but my mind was spinning. Had I imagined it all? Was I being paranoid? 15 minutes later, I had my answer. Camille's speech became slurred. She stumbled against a waiter, nearly toppling a tray of appetizers. Are you all right? I asked, gripping her elbow to steady her. I feel strange. Her words blurred together. Only had one drink. When she collapsed, panic erupted across the restaurant. Someone called for an ambulance, while Dmitri loosened her collar, checking her breathing. She only had one drink, people murmured in confusion. How could this happen? Renata reappeared, her face a mask of concern. But when our eyes met across the room, I saw something cold and calculating behind her practiced sympathy. I knew then, this wasn't over. It had only just begun. If you're feeling that chill down your spine already, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this unfolds. Drop a comment about what you think will happen next. I love reading your theories. My name is Petra Nichols, and until that night, I'd believed that pure talent and hard work were enough to succeed in the cutthroat culinary world. I was 32, graduated top of my class from culinary school, and had spent years honing my craft in kitchens across the country before landing at Lumiere, an upscale restaurant known for blending classic techniques with modern innovations. I grew up in a small town where my grandmother taught me to cook using ingredients from her garden. While other kids played video games, I experimented with flavors and textures. My parents died in a car accident when I was 14, leaving me to be raised by my grandmother. When she passed away during my second year of culinary school, cooking became more than a passion. It was my connection to the people I'd loved and lost. I'm not particularly tall or imposing. With unruly copper hair I keep tied back in the kitchen and hazel eyes that people tell me change color depending on my mood. What I lack in physical presence, I make up for in intensity and precision. My hands bear the marks of my profession, small burns and scars that tell the story of my journey. 3 years ago, I joined Lumiere, excited to work under Renata Klein, whose reputation as an innovative chef had attracted me to the restaurant. She was 45, with stark gray-streaked black hair always pulled into a severe bun and a commanding presence that made even veteran chefs straighten their posture when she entered the kitchen. Initially, Renata seemed supportive. She praised my technique and occasionally allowed me to contribute special dishes to the daily menu. The other staff warned me not to get comfortable with her approval. Renata doesn't share the spotlight. Tomas, a sous chef who had worked at Lumiere for 5 years, told me during my first month. The last promising chef who got too much attention disappeared faster than a soufflé in an open refrigerator. I didn't take his warning seriously until my seasonal tasting menu caught Dimitri's attention. The owner was a tall, bearded man with kind eyes that contrasted with his intimidating build. His family had been in the restaurant business for generations, and his opinion carried weight not just in our kitchen but throughout the city's culinary scene. This spring, vegetable composition with the fermented garlic foam, it's revolutionary, Dimitri had said, his accent thickening with enthusiasm. Who created this? Renata had frozen mid-step, her knife pausing over the fish she was filleting. It's a collaborative effort, she began, but Dimitri waved her off. No. This has a distinct perspective. Who specifically designed this dish? All eyes turned to me as I raised my hand slightly. I developed it based on techniques I studied in Japan last year. The next day, my dish was featured in a local magazine, with a small photograph of me quoted as Lumiere's rising star chef. That's when everything changed. Suddenly, my station was always missing ingredients when service began. Preparations I'd completed the night before would mysteriously be oversalted or overcooked by the time I arrived in the morning. Recipe modifications I suggested would be dismissed in staff meetings, only to appear on the menu weeks later, credited as executive chef's inspiration. When customers or critics specifically requested my dishes or asked to compliment the chef, Renata intercepted these moments, claiming credit with practiced humility. Yes, I've been developing that technique for years, she would say, while shooting me warning glances from across the kitchen. I confronted her once, after discovering she had replaced my signature sauce with an inferior version right before an important service. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, keeping my voice low as staff bustled around us. "I'm not trying to take anything from you." Renata's eyes narrowed. "Listen carefully, Petra. Kitchens have hierarchies for a reason. You haven't earned your place yet. You're riding on beginner's luck and borrowed ideas. My ideas are original." "Your ideas," she cut me off, "are unrefined concepts that require a master's touch to become worthy of this restaurant. Remember your place." Despite the sabotage, my dishes continued receiving praise. Customers began asking specifically for the menu items created by that red-headed chef. Food critics noted the distinctive handprint of a new talent emerging at Lumiere. The week before my promotion announcement, Renata made her boldest move yet. Dimitri had scheduled a special tasting for potential investors, and I was responsible for 3 of the 7 courses. The morning of the event, I discovered all my labeled ingredients had been switched or tampered with. Anticipating something like this, I had prepared duplicate components and stored them at Tomas's apartment the night before. I retrieved them with barely enough time to prepare my courses. The investors were impressed, particularly with my innovative approach to traditional techniques. The following day, Dimitri called me into his office and offered me the position of head chef for the main dining room. Renata would remain executive chef, overseeing the entire culinary operation, but I would have creative control over the main dining room menu. "You've proven yourself through adversity," Dmitri said, his expression suggesting he understood more than he let on about the kitchen dynamics. "That's the mark of a true chef," which brings us back to my promotion party and the drugged cocktail meant for me. In the aftermath of the incident, Camille was rushed to the hospital. The doctors pumped her stomach and kept her overnight for observation. She recovered fully by the next day, but remembered nothing after her first sip of the cocktail. The restaurant buzzed with whispers. Without clear proof of tampering, speculation ran wild. That's when Renata launched her counterattack. "Perhaps Petra was responsible," she suggested to Dmitri when she thought I couldn't hear. "She's been unstable under pressure lately, resentful that she didn't receive complete control of the kitchen." She leaned closer to him. "I've been covering for her mistakes for years. Ask anyone. She's been increasingly erratic since getting recognition. Without evidence, it became her word against mine. Renata had 8 years of trust built with the staff. I had only 3. The incident was eventually attributed to an unknown food sensitivity combined with alcohol, though I noticed Camille never accepted drinks at work events after that. Meanwhile, my kitchen life became increasingly unbearable. Renata assigned me the worst preparation stations with poor ventilation and limited counter space. She scheduled me for conflicting events, then documented my unreliability when I couldn't be in 2 places at once. Staff who had once celebrated my promotion now questioned my character, wondering if the rumors about my instability were true. Orders I sent to the dining room were returned with complaints that hadn't existed before. I began checking each plate meticulously before it left my station, often finding additional seasonings or ingredients that would ruin the dish's balance. "You should consider stepping down," Renata suggested 3 weeks after the party. "For health reasons, before things get worse for you." The threat hung in the air between us, clear as the blade of her expensive chef's knife. I considered quitting. My reputation was being systematically destroyed, and the joy I once found in cooking was evaporating under the constant strain of watching my back. But quitting meant Renata won. It meant abandoning the position I'd earned through years of dedication. It meant giving up the last connection to the passion my grandmother had instilled in me. So instead, I watched and learned Renata's patterns. She became careless when angry, and nothing angered her more than Wesley, the food critic whose glowing reviews had helped secure my promotion. He was notoriously demanding, sending back dishes that didn't meet his exacting standards, and he was scheduled to visit again in 1 month for a feature on innovative female chefs in the city. For weeks, I observed Renata's habits. She kept a personal notebook where she sketched modified versions of my signature dishes, planning to gradually replace my menu with her imitations. She believed no one could decipher her shorthand, but after years of reading her hastily scrawled instructions, I understood enough to recognize what she was doing. I also noticed something disturbing. She had begun researching food allergies and sensitivities, particularly Wesley's well-documented intolerance to certain mushroom varieties and truffles. This information was always included in his reservation notes, along with strict instructions that these ingredients must not even touch the plates of his accompanying guests due to severe reactions. One evening, as I was leaving the restaurant, I overheard Renata on the phone in her office. The door was slightly ajar, and her words drifted into the hallway. "Yes, I understand the risk," she was saying, "but it would only be trace amounts, enough to cause discomfort, not danger. It would discredit the new menu completely." My blood ran cold. Was she planning to deliberately trigger Wesley's allergies during his upcoming visit and blame it on my menu? I needed to be certain before making any accusations. The next morning, I arrived earlier than usual and found Renata's notebook temporarily unattended while she spoke with a delivery person. I quickly photographed several pages with my phone before returning it exactly as I'd found it. Later, reviewing the images, my suspicions were confirmed. She had noted Wesley's allergies with a small star and the words, "perfect opportunity" beside them. Beneath that was a modified recipe for my signature truffle-adjacent sauce that called for actual truffle oil, immerses, labeled special ingredient for W. My opportunity came during preparation for Wesley's upcoming visit. Renata had insisted on handling the critics' table personally, claiming her experience was needed for such an important review. The feature on female chefs will focus primarily on me, of course, she told the staff during our planning meeting. As the executive chef, I'll be showcasing my interpretation of modern cuisine. I noticed the pointed glance she threw my way. Petra will handle the secondary tables, she continued. We need to make sure the regular guests don't feel neglected while we focus on our special visitor. The other chefs exchanged uncomfortable glances. Everyone knew Wesley was coming specifically to taste my new menu creations after his previous review. While organizing the special menu later that day, I watched Renata make notes in her book. She believed no one could see what she was writing, but the large mirror above the prep station gave me a clear reflection. She was planning something dangerous. Her notes showed she was incorporating traces of truffle oil into dishes meant for Wesley's table. The realization hit me like ice water. This wasn't just professional sabotage anymore. This was deliberately endangering someone's health. Wesley's allergy was severe enough that even small amounts could send him to the hospital. And if that happened, the blame would fall on me, the head chef whose menu had accidentally poisoned a prominent food critic. I needed to act carefully. Direct accusations without proof would backfire spectacularly. Renata had already planted seeds of doubt about my stability among the staff. I needed irrefutable evidence and witnesses. The day before Wesley's visit, Renata confronted me in the walk-in refrigerator while I was selecting produce for the next day's preparations. The heavy door swung shut behind her, leaving us alone among shelves of ingredients. I'll be preparing the critic's main course, she announced with poorly hidden satisfaction. Dimitri feels your recent dishes have been disappointing. I kept my expression neutral. That's surprising. The customer feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. Renata's smile tightened. Customers don't always understand cuisine at the highest level. The owner has concerns about consistency. He's worried your emotional state might affect the quality. The implication hung in the cold air between us. She'd been systematically undermining my authority and reputation, and it was working. I nodded, feigning disappointment. I understand, I said quietly. I'll still help with prep. I could learn from watching your approach. Something like suspicion flickered in her eyes, but the deferential tone seemed to satisfy her ego. She agreed, likely wanting to witness my humiliation when the critic praised her food over mine. That's the right attitude, she said. Know your place, and perhaps you'll survive in this industry. As she turned to leave, I noticed a small vial peeking out of her pocket, unlabeled, filled with amber liquid that I suspected was pure truffle essence. My suspicions were confirmed, and terror gripped me. She wasn't just planning to include traces of truffle. She was going to ensure a severe reaction. I spent that night sleepless, weighing my options. By morning, I had a plan. On the night of Wesley's visit, I arrived 2 hours early to prepare stations. The kitchen was empty except for the dishwashers setting up for the evening service. I carefully checked every ingredient, making notes of exactly what was where. When Renata arrived later, she barely acknowledged me as the kitchen bustled with pre-service activity. The other chefs worked diligently, tension evident in their rigid movements. Everyone knew tonight's review could make or break our restaurant's reputation. The critic just arrived, Tomas announced, returning from peeking into the dining room. He's brought an assistant and the photographer from the magazine. Renata straightened her chef's coat, shooting me a triumphant look. Petra, handle the other tables. I'll take care of Wesley personally. I nodded, keeping my head down as I continued preparing the components for my station. But I wasn't as submissive as I appeared. Earlier, I'd spoken with Camille from HR, sharing my concerns without making direct accusations. I'd also had a brief conversation with Dimitri, mentioning the unusual change in protocol for handling the critics' table. Just a precaution, I'd told him. Given Wesley's allergies, I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of the safety protocols. As service began, I executed each dish flawlessly, earning appreciative nods from the waitstaff. Meanwhile, I kept one eye on Renata as she personally prepared Wesley's courses. The moment came during the preparation of the main dish, a duck breast with seasonal vegetables and a special sauce that was a modified version of my signature creation. As Renata began assembling the critic's special dish, I noticed Dimitri observing from the kitchen doorway, exactly as I'd hoped. Renata reached into her pocket and removed the small vial I'd spotted earlier. With practiced sleight of hand, she began to add drops to the sauce. "Chef Renata," I called out, just loud enough to be heard over the kitchen noise. "I think the owner has a question about the presentation." Renata's head snapped up, and she saw Dimitri watching intently. She tried to casually pocket the vial, but in her haste, it slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. Dimitri stepped forward. "What are you adding to that plate?" he asked sharply. Renata startled. "Just the finishing touches. That looks like truffle oil," said Dimitri, moving closer to examine the fallen vial. Wesley specifically mentioned his severe truffle allergy when he made the reservation. "It's in all our notes." The kitchen fell silent. Line cooks paused mid-task, witnessing the confrontation. "It's not," Renata began, but Dimitri had already picked up the vial and unscrewed the cap, wafting the scent toward his nose. "This is concentrated truffle oil," he confirmed, his face darkening. "What is this doing anywhere near the critic's food?" Renata's eyes darted around the kitchen, landing on me with sudden fury. "Petra must have placed it there. She's been sabotaging the kitchen for weeks." The accusation hung in the air, but it lacked conviction. Too many eyes had seen her take the vial from her own pocket. "That's a serious accusation," Dimitri said coldly. "One that requires evidence." What Renata didn't realize was that I hadn't needed to create false evidence or elaborate traps. I had simply ensured the owner was present at the exact moment she implemented her sabotage. The owner continued, "We've also received concerning information about what happened at the promotion party. The bartender came forward this morning. My heart skipped. This was news even to me." The HR director stepped into the kitchen, holding a tablet. Arlo, our head bartender, noticed something unusual that night but was afraid to speak up given Renata's position. After recent events, he reviewed the security footage. She turned the tablet around, showing crystal-clear footage of Renata dropping something into my cocktail at the party. Renata's face contorted with rage. "That proves nothing. It could have been anything. A garnish, a flavor enhancer." "I had medical tests done after my food sensitivity incident," Camille stated firmly. "The results showed sedatives in my system, the same kind used to calm anxious pets, like your cat that you're always talking about." Renata's face drained of all color. "You can't prove that came from me." "Perhaps not conclusively," Dimitri admitted, "but attempting to poison a food critic? That I saw with my own eyes." He turned to the sous chef. "Tomas, please escort Renata to my office and call the police." "This is absurd," Renata shouted as Tomas approached her. "She's manipulating all of you. She's been planning this." As Tomas led her away, her eyes locked onto mine with pure hatred. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "No kitchen in this city will hire you after I'm done telling them what you're really like." The door swung shut behind them, leaving the kitchen in stunned silence. Dimitri turned to me. "Can you handle the critic's table?" I nodded, already moving to prepare a fresh plate, free from contamination. "Of course. And Petra," he added, "I owe you an apology. I should have seen what was happening sooner." That night, Wesley's review table received the best meal I'd ever created. The article that followed 2 weeks later praised the remarkable talent and integrity of Lumiere's head chef. By the time the article was published, Renata had been fired. The police investigation had uncovered more than anyone expected. Her notebook revealed her plans to undermine several staff members, modified recipes with dangerous substitutions, and detailed schemes to take full control of the kitchen by forcing out anyone she perceived as a threat. But Renata's termination didn't feel like victory. The kitchen staff remained wary around me, wondering if I had somehow orchestrated her downfall. The trauma of working under constant sabotage had left its mark on my confidence. "It will take time," Camille told me over coffee, a month after the incident. "Trust doesn't rebuild overnight." "I'm not sure I want to stay," I admitted. "Every corner of that kitchen reminds me of her." Camille studied me carefully. "What would your grandmother say about that?" The question caught me off guard. I'd mentioned my grandmother to Camille only once, briefly sharing how she'd inspired my cooking. She'd tell me that kitchens are meant for creating, not for dwelling on bitterness, I said finally. She'd say, "The best revenge against someone who tried to extinguish your flame is to burn brighter." Smart woman, Camille nodded. By the way, have you checked your email today? Dimitri sent something important to all the management staff. I hadn't, and when I opened my inbox that evening, I found a message that changed everything. Dimitri was restructuring the restaurant's leadership. The position of executive chef was open, and he was asking for my decision by the end of the week. Taking the role meant completely redesigning the kitchen culture that Renata had created, a culture of fear, competition, and sabotage. It meant proving that success didn't require destroying others. It meant facing staff who might still harbor doubts about me. That night, I dreamed of my grandmother's kitchen, warm, welcoming, filled with the scents of herbs and spices. I woke with clarity. The next morning, I walked into Dimitri's office with my decision. I'll take the position, I told him, but I want to make some changes. 6 months later, Lumiere was transformed. We implemented an open notebook policy where all recipe development was shared and credited properly. Collaborative dishes became our signature, with multiple chefs contributing components to showcase our diverse talents. The kitchen atmosphere shifted from cutthroat competition to creative collaboration. We instituted a mentorship program for young chefs, particularly those from disadvantaged backgrounds who needed guidance and opportunity. But the true test came when I received an unexpected email from a prestigious culinary competition. The judges wanted me to participate in their annual Chef's Challenge, SISE, a high-profile event broadcast nationally. The catch? Renata Klein had also been invited, representing a small restaurant in a neighboring city that had taken her in despite the rumors. The email explained that the producers were aware of our professional history and thought the dynamic would make for compelling television. They promised to ensure a fair competition with strict oversight. My finger hovered over the delete button. Did I really want to face her again? In front of cameras and a national audience? What if she tried something during the competition? What if this was her chance to publicly discredit me? I was about to decline when a notification popped up on my phone. A review of Lumiere from a new customer. I've never experienced a restaurant where the food told such a cohesive story of passion and resilience. Each dish felt like a personal narrative from the chef, inviting diners into a journey of transformation. Whatever challenges this kitchen has faced, they've alchemized them into something extraordinary. I stared at those words for a long time. Then I returned to the email and clicked accept. The chef's challenge would take place in 3 weeks. I had no idea what Renata might be planning, but this time, I wasn't facing her alone. I had a team that believed in me, a restaurant that stood behind me, and a cooking philosophy that couldn't be corrupted by fear or sabotage. As I closed my laptop, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Hello? I answered cautiously. Is this Petra Nichols? Asked an unfamiliar voice. Yes, speaking. This is Detective Rivera from the Financial Crimes Unit. We've been investigating Renata Klein's activities at Lumiere, and some discrepancies have emerged. Would you be available to answer some questions tomorrow? My heart raced. What kind of discrepancies? The detective paused. I'd rather discuss it in person, but it involves vendor payments, kickbacks, and some concerning transactions that occurred during her time as executive chef. Your name has come up in some of the documentation. As I hung up the phone, a chill ran through me. Just when I thought the Renata chapter of my life was closing, it seemed there was another page yet to be turned. What financial schemes had she been running? And more importantly, had she somehow implicated me in them? The chef's challenge suddenly seemed like the least of my worries, because if there's one thing more dangerous than a chef with a grudge, it's a chef with a grudge who thinks she has nothing left to lose. The next day, I met Detective Rivera at the police station, Dutch, a stocky woman with intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She led me to a small interview room with a table and 3 chairs. Thank you for coming in, Miss Nichols, she said, opening a thick folder. What I'm about to share might be disturbing. She spread out financial documents, invoices, receipts, bank statements, across the table. For the past 4 years, Renata Klein has been running an elaborate scheme at Lumiere. She's been inflating vendor invoices, pocketing the difference, and falsifying inventory records to cover the discrepancies. My stomach tightened as I scanned the documents. The concerning part, Detective Rivera continued, sliding a stack of papers toward me, is that several of these fraudulent transactions bear your signature. I stared at the papers in shock. There was my signature, or what appeared to be my signature, on purchase orders for ingredients that never arrived, equipment we never received, and specialty items at 3 times their market value. This isn't my signature, I said, studying the documents more closely. I mean, it looks similar, but these aren't my handwriting. We suspected as much, the detective nodded. The forgeries are good, but not perfect. Forensic analysis shows inconsistencies. Relief washed over me, but it quickly gave way to a new worry. Why would she forge my signature specifically? Detective Rivera's expression grew serious. We believed she was creating a fall person, someone to take the blame if her schemes were discovered. The forgeries began shortly after your promotion party incident. The realization hit me like a physical blow. While I'd been focused on surviving daily kitchen battles, Renata had been setting me up for something much worse, potential criminal charges. There's more, Detective Rivera continued. We found these in her home office during our search. She opened her laptop and turned it toward me. On the screen were photographs of me, entering my apartment building, shopping at the market, even talking with Tomas outside the restaurant. In some photos, notes were scrawled in the margins. Still friendly with Tomas, possible collaborator, and meets with Camille weekly. Discussing what? She was stalking me, I whispered, cold dread seeping into my bones. It appears so, Detective Rivera confirmed. And based on her online search history, she was researching ways to discredit you professionally and personally. Is she going to jail? I asked, my voice unsteady. The financial crimes investigation is ongoing, but we have enough evidence for charges. However, there's a complication. She hesitated. Renata Klein has disappeared. Disappeared? She hasn't been at her apartment for 3 days. Her phone is off. Her car was found abandoned at a train station. We're treating her as a person of interest who has fled. I left the police station with a security escort and official advice to be vigilant. My mind raced with implications. Renata was gone, possibly on the run, possibly planning something worse than financial fraud. And in 3 weeks, I was supposed to face her at the Chef's Challenge. I called the competition organizers immediately, but they had no information about Renata withdrawing. According to them, she had confirmed her participation just yesterday via email. When I mentioned the police investigation, they were concerned but reluctant to pull her from the competition without charges being filed. We'll increase security, they promised, and ensure contestants are never alone together. The following days passed in a blur of anxiety and preparation. I installed new locks on my apartment door and a security system with cameras. Detective Rivera assigned an officer to drive past my building during night shifts. Meanwhile, I threw myself into planning for the competition. If Renata was going to show up, I needed to be ready, not just culinarily, but mentally and emotionally. The Chef's Challenge format required 3 dishes, an appetizer using a surprise ingredient, a main course showcasing our signature style, and a dessert that told a personal story. 16 chefs would compete in the preliminary round, with 4 advancing to the finals. I practiced for hours after restaurant shifts, testing combinations and techniques until my hands cramped. My team at Lumiere supported me enthusiastically, acting as judges for practice runs and offering honest feedback. You're overthinking it, Tomas told me one night as I discarded my 5th attempt at a complex dessert. Your strength has always been honest food, with unexpected twists. This feels like you're trying to impress judges rather than telling your story. He was right. I was so fixated on outperforming Renata that I'd lost sight of my own culinary voice. The next morning, I started fresh. Instead of elaborate constructions, I returned to the flavors my grandmother had taught me, elevated through technique, but true to their origins. The dessert became a simple apple tart with fennel-infused custard, a combination that had delighted me as a child when I accidentally mixed spices in my grandmother's kitchen. A week before the competition, Camille invited me for dinner at her home, insisting I needed a night away from kitchen stress. Any updates about Renata? She asked as we sipped wine in her living room. Nothing. It's like she vanished. I shook my head. The competition organizers still expect her to compete. Are you sure you want to go through with this? It feels risky. I considered the question seriously. If I withdraw, she wins without even showing up. Besides, there will be security, cameras, other chefs. What could she possibly do? Camille looked unconvinced. People like Renata don't just give up, they escalate. Her words haunted me that night as I lay awake, staring at my ceiling. What if Renata was planning something beyond simple competition sabotage? What if the chef's challenge was just a means to get close to me again? 2 days before the competition, I received a package at the restaurant, a small box with no return address. Inside was a single piece of paper with words cut from magazines. Ready for your final cooking lesson? Detective Rivera collected the package for evidence, but there wasn't much to trace. It was delivered by a courier service, she explained, paid for in cash by someone wearing a hat and sunglasses. The morning of the chef's challenge arrived with a heavy knot in my stomach. The competition was being held in the convention center's grand ballroom, transformed into a cooking arena with individual stations for each chef and a central judge's platform. As I checked in at the registration desk, I scanned the room for Renata. There was no sign of her among the chefs preparing their stations. Has Renata Klein checked in yet? I asked the coordinator. Not yet, but we have chefs arriving until noon, she replied, checking her tablet. She confirmed yesterday that she'll be here. I set up my station methodically, organizing tools and checking equipment. Camera crews moved around, capturing B-roll footage, and the other chefs made small talk as they prepared. At 11:30, a commotion at the entrance caught everyone's attention. Renata had arrived. She looked different, thinner, with her hair cut short and dyed blonde. But her walk was unmistakable, the confident stride of someone who believed the room belonged to her. Our eyes met across the cooking stations, and she smiled, a cold, calculating expression that sent chills down my spine. Contestants, please gather for the pre-competition briefing, announced the head judge, a celebrated chef with 3 Michelin stars. We formed a semicircle in front of the judge's table. I positioned myself between 2 other chefs, keeping maximum distance from Renata, who stood directly across from me. The head judge explained the rules, scoring criteria, and time limits. Then he added, due to concerns raised by our security team, we've implemented additional measures today. Each station has its own dedicated camera. All ingredients will be inspected before use, and contestants are not permitted to approach each other's stations for any reason. His gaze lingered on Renata and me, making it clear he knew about our history. Now, let's reveal the surprise ingredient for the appetizer round. With theatrical flourish, he unveiled a covered platter. Fresh sea urchin. You have 45 minutes starting. Now. The kitchen erupted into activity. I focused entirely on my dish, blocking out Renata's presence across the room. Sea urchin was delicate. Its briny sweetness could easily be overwhelmed. I decided on a sea urchin custard with citrus accents and crispy rice paper. Halfway through the round, I glanced up to find Renata staring at me while chopping herbs. She held my gaze as she deliberately sliced through the herbs with unnecessary force, the knife blade glinting under the lights. The message was clear. This wasn't just a cooking competition for her. When time was called, we presented our appetizers to the judges. My sea urchin custard received high praise for its balance and restraint. Renata's sea urchin foam with caviar garnish was described as technically flawless but somewhat cold and impersonal. During the short break before the main course round, I stepped outside for air. A production assistant hurried after me. Chef Nichols, you're needed back inside. There's an issue with your station. I rushed back to find 3 judges and a security officer standing at my cooking area. My knives, the handcrafted set my grandmother had given me before she died, were missing. I had them right here, I said, gesturing to the empty knife roll. They were here when I left. The head judge frowned. The station cameras show someone approaching your station during the break, but their back was to the camera. My eyes immediately went to Renata, who was calmly preparing her ingredients across the room as if nothing had happened. We'll provide you with replacement knives, offered the judge, and we'll review all security footage. The replacement knives were quality tools but unfamiliar in my hands. As I began preparing my main course, a duck breast with fermented plum sauce that had become my signature at Lumiere, I struggled to find my rhythm. Halfway through the round, a security officer approached me discreetly. "We found these in the women's restroom trash," he whispered, revealing my knife roll. "They appear undamaged." Relief flooded through me as I reclaimed my tools. But the incident had cost me precious minutes. I raced to complete my dish, finishing just as the timer buzzed. The judges noted that my duck was slightly overcooked but praised the complexity of the sauce. Renata's main course, a lobster preparation with 20 different elements, received mixed reviews. "Impressive technique," said one judge, "but it lacks soul." The dessert round would determine which 4 chefs advanced to the finals. As we prepared for the final challenge, I felt Renata's eyes boring into me from across the room. "For this round," announced the head judge, "create a dessert that tells us your personal story. You have 1 hour." I began preparing my apple tart, working methodically to create the delicate fennel custard. Across the room, Renata was constructing an elaborate chocolate sculpture, her movements precise and calculated. With 15 minutes remaining, disaster struck. As I removed my tart from the oven, someone bumped into me from behind. The hot pan tilted, and my tart slid sideways, breaking apart as it hit the counter. I turned to find a camera operator backing away. "I'm so sorry, I didn't see you there." Panic threatened to overwhelm me as I stared at my ruined dessert. There wasn't time to start over. Around me, the other chefs continued working, unaware of my crisis. Then, clarity cut through the panic. This is exactly what Renata wanted, to see me fail publicly, to watch me break down on national television. I refused to give her that satisfaction. I took a deep breath and assessed what remained salvageable. The custard was intact. Pieces of the tart could be repurposed. I could create a deconstructed version, not what I had planned, but perhaps even more meaningful. As the clock ticked down, I arranged the broken tart pieces on individual plates, adding custard and fresh apple slices. I titled it "Rebuilding" and finished just as time was called. When the judges reached my station, I explained, "This dessert represents my journey. Sometimes life breaks apart what we've carefully created, but the essential flavors, the truth of who we are, remains. We simply find new ways to present ourselves to the world." The head judge tasted a spoonful and closed his eyes. "This is unexpectedly moving. The contrast between the shattered pastry and the smooth custard creates a narrative on the plate." The judges moved on to Renata's station, where her chocolate sculpture depicted a phoenix rising from flames. "My story is about rebirth after betrayal," she explained, her eyes flicking toward me, "about rising stronger after being unfairly cast out." The judges nodded appreciatively at the technical skill, but one commented, "The chocolate itself is slightly bitter." "Was that intentional?" "Bitterness is part of my story," Renata replied smoothly. After tasting all 16 desserts, the judges retreated to deliberate. The chefs waited tensely in the green room, separated from one another by production assistants. An hour later, we were called back to hear the results. The head judge stood at the center of the cooking arena, cameras trained on his face. 4 chefs will advance to tomorrow's finals. They are. He named the first finalist, a young chef from Seattle, known for innovative seafood preparations. Then the second, a veteran chef from Chicago with a farm-to-table philosophy. Our third finalist is Petra Nichols from Lumiere. Relief and pride washed over me as applause filled the room. Just one spot remained, and our final contestant advancing to tomorrow's championship round is. The room went silent as he paused for dramatic effect. Chef Lydia Martinez from San Antonio. Renata's name wasn't called. She stood frozen, her face a mask of disbelief that quickly morphed into fury. As the eliminated chefs were instructed to clear their stations, she remained rooted in place. I gathered my knives and belongings, careful to keep everything in sight. As I turned to leave, Renata suddenly appeared before me. "This isn't over," she hissed, her voice low enough that only I could hear. "You think you've won? I've only just begun." A security officer stepped between us. "Chef Klein, please clear your station immediately." As she was escorted away, she called over her shoulder, "See you at the after-party, Petra. I made something special just for you." The threat hung in the air as I watched her leave. The competition after-party was a tradition, a chance for all participants to mingle with judges and sponsors regardless of the results. I had planned to attend briefly, but now I wasn't sure. Detective Rivera had warned me to avoid any situation where Renata might have access to food or drink I would consume. But skipping the party would appear unprofessional and possibly affect sponsorship opportunities. I called Detective Rivera from the green room. She threatened me directly, I explained after describing the day's events. Said she made something special for me at the after-party. I'll have officers there, she promised, and I'd advise you not to consume anything unless you've seen it prepared. The party was held in the convention center's rooftop garden, an elegant space with panoramic city views. Chefs, judges, sponsors, and media mingled over cocktails and hors d'oeuvres prepared by the convention center staff. I entered cautiously, immediately scanning the room for Renata. She stood near the bar, deep in conversation with one of the sponsors. When our eyes met, she raised her glass in mock toast. I kept my distance, accepting congratulations from judges and fellow chefs while declining all offered food and drink. An hour into the event, the head judge clinked his glass for attention. I'd like to thank all our contestants for their outstanding work today, he began. Before we wrap up this evening, we have a special presentation from our sponsors. A waiter appeared with a tray of champagne flutes, a special blend created by our beverage sponsor, explained the judge as glasses were distributed. When a flute was offered to me, I politely declined. Just water for me, thank you. Renata, who had somehow materialized nearby, smirked. Afraid of a little champagne, Petra? How unprofessional. The sponsor representative looked uncomfortable. It's a special honor. The blend was created specifically for this event. I felt the eyes of everyone in the room. Refusing would seem petty and paranoid, but accepting. Perhaps we could toast with our own preferred beverages, I suggested. I'm preparing for tomorrow's finals and avoiding alcohol. The head judge nodded approvingly. A responsible choice. As the toast commenced, I noticed Renata watching me intently, disappointment evident in her expression. Whatever she had planned had been thwarted, at least for now. I left the party shortly after, escorted to my hotel by a security officer provided by the competition organizers. Despite the protective measures, I slept fitfully, dreaming of broken tarts and poisoned champagne. The finals the next day were intense but exhilarating. Without Renata's presence, I cooked with renewed freedom and creativity. When the results were announced, I had placed second overall, a remarkable achievement that would bring valuable attention to Lumiere. As I packed my knives after the competition, my phone rang. It was Detective Rivera. "Congratulations on your placement," she said, "and I have news you'll want to hear. Renata Klein was arrested an hour ago." My heart stuttered. For what? One of the waiters at the after-party noticed her adding something to a champagne flute before service. He reported it to security, who detained her discreetly. The substance has been identified as ipecac syrup. It would have made you violently ill during your final competition today. Relief washed over me, but also a strange emptiness. It was over, truly over. Renata would face charges for attempted poisoning on top of the financial crimes. There's something else, Detective Rivera added. During her arrest, we found documentation suggesting she's been sabotaging other chefs throughout her career. You weren't her first target, just the one who finally exposed her. 2 weeks later, I received a letter from the prison where Renata awaited trial. For days, I left it unopened on my kitchen counter, unsure if I wanted to read whatever justifications or accusations she had written. When I finally opened it, the message was brief. You think you've won, but look around your precious kitchen. How many faces still question you? How many wonder if I was right about you all along? That's my real revenge. The seeds of doubt I planted will grow long after I'm gone. R. I read the letter twice, then dropped it into the shredder. She was wrong. The kitchen at Lumiere had transformed in the months since her departure. Trust had replaced suspicion. Collaboration had replaced competition. We were creating the best food of our careers in an environment where everyone could thrive. That evening, as service began, I gathered my kitchen staff. Today marks 6 months since we began our new chapter here, I told them. I want to thank each of you for your trust and creativity. I didn't mention Renata or her letter. She didn't deserve space in our kitchen anymore. As we prepared for service, Tomas nudged me. Have you seen the latest restaurant rankings? We moved up to number 3 in the city. I smiled, checking the final plating on an appetizer. Next year, we'll be number 1. With your dessert from the competition added to our menu? Definitely. He hesitated. You know, I always wondered, how did you stay so calm when your tart broke during the competition? Most chefs would have fallen apart. I considered his question as I wiped a smudge from the plate's rim. I realized something in that moment. Renata spent years trying to break me. My confidence, my reputation, my career. When that tart shattered, I understood that broken pieces can still create something beautiful if you're not afraid to reimagine them. The maitre d' appeared at the kitchen entrance. First seating is full. Everyone's asking for the executive chef's special. I nodded, straightening my chef's coat. Let's show them what we can do. As I moved through my kitchen, my domain, I felt a sense of peace. The ultimate revenge against someone like Renata wasn't public humiliation or professional destruction. It was simply this: thriving in the space she had tried to deny me, creating beauty from the broken pieces she had left behind, and most importantly, remembering that the best kitchens are built on lifting others up, not tearing them down. That night, every dish that left our kitchen told that story, a story of resilience, transformation, and the quiet power of refusing to become the thing that tried to destroy you. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of resilience and redemption. Have you ever had to rebuild after someone tried to break you? Share your experience in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you turned broken pieces into something beautiful.